Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Ryan with Propelio. Today's show, we've got Rob Nickell from Rocket Station. We're going to be talking about all things virtual admins. There's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of just ins and outs. There's a lot of things that people just don't know and aren't aware of. And hopefully we'll be able to address all those things with Rob today. As always, I've got Casey with me, Casey Dehle, the most amazingest person in North Texas, or the world, the universe, all of it.
I love this intro.
Exactly. So stick around. If you have questions, if you have comments, if this is live, so if you want to steer the conversation, drop it in both YouTube and on Facebook, and we will address those. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, come on now. We'll be right back.
Propelio TV is sponsored by Noble Mortgage and Investments, Batchkip Tracing, Think Multifamily, CreativeCashflow.com, and Lifener.
Want to keep up with the latest Propelio TV daily? Be sure to subscribe and click that bell.
Hey guys, welcome back. Really excited to be here with Rob Nickell because, for one, running my business, virtual admins and assistants are the best thing I've ever done, but I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about them and kind of their roles, how to hire, what they can do and things like that. So I'm really excited that you're here.
Yeah, I actually want to hit a question right off the bat
All right,
because I feel
let's
like admin assistant, is that just the same thing or is there a difference?
Yeah, no, first, thank you guys for having me. This is
No,
great.
right
I
into
really
it, right
appreciate
into
being
it.
here. Yeah, it's
Give
like
us
I'm very
answers.
excited to be here. The Propelio series, it's awesome. Yeah, virtual, what is a VA, I guess is the real question. Is that what you're asking,
Sure.
right? It's like a VA is any team member that works for you, just not in your office. The task could be any range of tasks. So the term virtual assistant was coined around the 1990s, about the time technology was taking over. So you had shared document storage, you had email really taking over, and things from a technology standpoint improving where a virtual workforce was possible. And so that's really where the term came through. So it's really anybody that's working outside your office, but from a task standpoint, it can be general admin like executive assistants, but it can be more primary important stuff in the day-to-day as well.
Yeah.
But in the standard norm, like just what's the word?
The terminology.
Terminology, it's just, everybody just uses VA.
Yeah, VA, virtual assistant, VA,
You know,
VA,
and it could
VA.
be, and it could literally be anything from accounting to just sales to pretty much anything, as long as it's just, you know, virtual.
Yeah, well, I know people that use VAs because I think we kind of always assume that, oh, well, it's just an assistant. They just kind of do small little admin tasks. But I know people that are using them as integrator positions in their business, who are project managers in their business. So you can really put them in any position.
Yeah, because of the technology that's available today, you know, every phone system's a voice over IP phone system or internet phone system. From the softwares we use, from our CRMs to all the online tools, whether you're hiring somebody internally or externally, the process is pretty much the same from setup to implementation, accountability, and the expectations. It's just kind of knowing that process, knowing how to do it. But it's really no different than hiring an internal team member. It's just getting over the psychological hurdle of they're not actually sitting in your office every day.
So what would be like the psychological hurdles? Is it literally just that of just being the fear of not working side by side and be able to like physically like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them. I think the most common thing is when people think of VA, they're thinking, you know, third world, they're thinking lack of education, they're thinking poor English skills, they're thinking remedial tasks, or you're thinking, you know, every time you've gotten a phone call to a service department that you didn't enjoy that experience, that's immediately what people think, like poor English, bad service.
Yeah.
Right, because if I call like my Capital One credit card, I don't want to throw them on the bus because they're pretty good now, but like I'll throw Bank of America because I don't bank with them anymore. But you call them up for like, what is this charge? And they're like, you know, I don't want to do a bad impression because
let's not go down that
let's not
road.
do that. But you know, it's just the stereotypes that you're like, I never want to call them ever again.
Yeah, and you
I
know
think
that's kind of been the primary experience most people have had.
Right.
And it's kind of the experience I had originally when I was looking for help, which is ultimately what led us into creating our own platform. But you know, we always say real estate's really easy. Hiring, training, managing people, that's really hard. Teams are hard. And so what we were looking for is originally when I was just doing real estate back in 2008, 9, 10, 11, I was just looking for that easy button to implement someone to be a lead manager or to run comps or to be able to do dispositions, all the different stuff in the day-to-day. It's a transactional business. I was thinking the same thing you guys were, somebody overseas couldn't do those types of things. And I held on to everything myself. I thought, every phone call, I needed to be the one to answer it because I'm representing my business, right? Or running comps, it's like, that's how I'm making my offer. So I've got to be the one to run the comps, even though it's the same process every time.
Exactly.
It's mostly a checklist thing.
So to skip ahead, basically you're saying, like with VAs, it's not just the remedial tasks. It's just how creative you can get and how much power. Power is not the right word, but how much responsibility do you want to outsource?
Yeah, here's the great thing about where we are today is we've come so far. Upwork is now publicly traded. Back when I was hiring off of Upwork, it was Elance and Odesk, and they're their own these own platforms. And we've progressed so much just from an industry. The industry is technically called BPO, Business Process Outsourcing, is the technical term for the industry that nobody knows anything about, right?
No, I
that is
didn't.
the industry that I am in, but virtual assistants,
right?
Because people aren't interested in hiring team members, they're interested in outcomes, right?
Or making money.
Right. That's the outcome of your business, right? You're trying to do transactions. You're trying to turn business. If you're a wholesaler, this is a machine. You have to market. You have to run comps. You have to, your dispositions, your transaction management. Every single time, it's got to run, right? In the same way, if you're rehabbing, you execute the strategy, then someone's got to schedule all this stuff every single day and run your accounting and do all the things. Property management, right? Every phase of real estate, business is business. The phone's ringing. Things have to get done in the day. It doesn't mean somebody's got to do it inside your office. What we like to do is look at your current teams, your current structure, and say, okay, what's highest and best use of your time? What's the highest best use of your time and your other team members' time? If you have team members, it's like the most common thing we see is acquisition agents who are hired to go meet with sellers face-to-face and get contracts. And then they spend their whole day answering the phones and running comps and driving neighborhoods and trying to update the CRM and answering questions from what's going on with leads and doing lead review. And they don't spend very much of their time actually meeting with sellers. So if we take all of those things, if we essentially create a lead manager for them where they're answering the phone, someone's competent, they've got great English proficiency, we call it rhino skin. It's not easy to necessarily answer the phone, but that's a different profile than someone's going to do admin. But when we've got a lead manager for an acquisition person, it's about utilizing that acquisition member to their highest and best use and then take everything else off their plate. And that's how you get real efficiency.
Yeah, and I can speak from experience. Before I got into real estate, I worked as a contractor for a company where I was sales, and they ran it just like that. And they were based out of a completely different state. I had a call manager who would say, hey, Casey, go here, who would dispatch me, and it was that easy, and all I had to do was turn in paperwork. And then it's like, go to the next
Right,
lead.
so this term, like executive assistant, it sounds so like pompous, and it sounds like, it's almost like when I was hiring my first executive assistant, I felt like I didn't deserve it. It's like, I don't right? It's like this thing. But when you look at the inside salespeople, they need help with their calendar management and follow up. And I can't tell you the number of times I showed up and a seller either wasn't there or wasn't ready for me or wanted to reschedule. I don't have time to show back up. I don't have time. So running their day-to-day calendars, doing the follow-up, doing all the stuff that has to take place in the day-to-day to actually get a transaction done. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's rewind a little bit, because I think you're touching on a point that a lot of people might not know where to start. Because I think we can probably sit here and all agree, yes, to have that in place would be phenomenal. My biggest pain point in my business is A, deciding which tasks are being outsourced, and B, what the position is that I would hire first, second, third.
Yeah.
Can you kind of speak to that and like how to maybe approach that in your business?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So if we're talking real estate, but really any business, it's kind of the same thing, it's the same process. But talking real estate, you're going through the same few processes every single time over and over and over again. So identifying your pain points is pretty simple for most of us because we go to bed feeling kind of guilty every day about a few things that aren't getting done. There's not enough time in the day, whatever it may be. Usually people have a few gut things that they know are really hurting them, right? But the most common things would be all the administrative stuff. So every time, contract to close, carrying that with title companies, all the day-to-day things that are repetitive that you can put a checklist around. you either need to have that scope built yourself, like you either need to do that, or you need to work with a service provider like us that can create those scopes for you. Because let me take a step back. Sorry, I really think the first step is getting organized. Before you hire anybody, like the first step is just to get organized.
100% agree.
Because I know in working here at Propelio, like I would love to have a virtual assistant because there's so many tasks that I could be like, okay, I could have them do this, do that, do this. But then it's like, shit, I gotta train them.
Yeah, so let's just go through the process. Can we just go through the process?
Yes,
Just quick, what I think would be the most, like, what if anybody was going to do it, what they should do. So first, get organized. You look at your day all day. You know what you do because you do it. It's in your head. But if you tried to explain somebody to your job, how to do your job all day, you're now kind of like,
And they're dependent on you.
Well, other than just a tangent, because there's times like, what does Ryan do? And I feel like I do a lot, but then when I vocalize it, I'm like, I really don't do anything.
Okay, that's how most people work. That's most businesses, and we just get our days done because we have to do it, and we get through it, and we know what we're doing, and we know what the logins are, and we know which websites to go to. We just know what we're doing. Right. So the first step, which is what I call brain damage, and my whole team that's watching this hates when I say brain damage because it's not. It's just what you need to do. But the brain damage is slowing down.
Yeah.
And it's looking at what you do all day long, and then looking at, hey, what is best use of my time? What's best use of my, like actually slowing down and saying, here's how our business works.
Yes.
For example, you can look pretty easily at the way you market. You know, you're either doing direct mail or PPC, or you're doing Facebook ads, or you're doing outbound dialing. There's only 6-7 ways really you can market, and it's only going to generate leads in a few ways. It's either a phone call, it's a web form.
That's a good callback because we interviewed the gentleman from The Onion, Scott Dickers, and he said there's 7 mediums. So check out that video. We'll post a link. Anyway, sorry.
It's true. There's only a few ways to do it, right?
Thing.
There's only a few ways to do it. So that creates a call, a web form, so it's some kind of follow-up there, right? So just thinking about the process, how you do it. Most of us run our day-to-day not the most efficient way. We have tons of compromises built in from either money or time. Right? It's like every study shows that every phone call should be live answered. But how many of us actually live answer every call? How many of us have dedicated team members to actually live answer those calls? How many of us using call centers to push those calls to? That's a compromise, right?
And on that, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I just think it's just to strongly point out that everybody's like, well, I answer my phone. Okay, if you do, you are unique. And if you don't believe me, just go down the street and for the next 10 bandit signs you call them. And then,
well, that's an unfair example because those calls go to voicemail for legal purposes.
Well,
so bad example.
But there are lots of other examples,
but they shouldn't.
Right? There's like,
yeah.
So, like other marketing campaigns where you're not, right, like a direct mail campaign, so many times it's like there's only so many hours in the day. We only have so much from like a revenue standpoint to be able to invest in the business, right? We can only build so much of an overhead, and there's a lot of things to get done. So we just build a lot of compromises into our business just to get through the day-to-day. It's what we do. So the first thing is really to kind of look at how you structure your business and be a little bit honest with yourself and a little bit candid, because we all go to groups, we all go to meetups and all the different events, and nobody talks about how hard it actually is to run their business, right? I'll do over 50 events this year, and not one time will somebody stand up and be like, hey guys, this is hard. This is really freaking hard. It's more of, let me show you how awesome we all the cool stuff we've got going. Well, the truth is then they turn around and call us and we got to go figure it out, right? Because operations is where it's really at. And where the rubber meets the road is doing the day-to-day task, right? It's not sexy, but that's what has to happen. So the first step is just getting organized and looking at your business, seeing how it works, just kind of seeing communication correspondence, how do leads get pushed, just kind of evaluating where you are. Ideally, you've got it all written down.
Right.
You've got scope, systems, processes. Most people don't have that, but that's ideally where you start.
So just to plan out, to like, where does someone start, like in mapping that out? Is it the things that are like, okay, only I can do, or is it just mapping out everything and then from there going, oh, I could outsource this, I could outsource this?
Yeah, so the heart, it's 2 steps. One is the day's got to get created, right? And so it's most people call us initially because just getting structured and organized is hard, right? Slowing down enough to actually look at your systems and process. It's easy to say, hey, we got to follow up with every lead, but when that call goes to voicemail, we have to have a predetermined voicemail to leave that person, right?
Yes.
So it's easy to say, hey, yeah, we want to leave a voicemail with everybody. It's a little bit harder to say, okay, well, what are we going to say? And how often are we going to say it? And when are we going to leave those messages?
And when are we going to check it?
And when are we going to do it, right? And what's the follow-up? Because that's where most people do surface level systems, meaning they kind of get through the day. They convert on the cream of their leads, the things that kind of convert and work through, and then everything else just accumulates. And they feel good about their day because they're super busy and they're overwhelmed and they've got a lot going on and they're doing some transactions. But at the end of the day, they're really not getting through much depth in their business. They're just
I was going to say a good way
live.
to start, and how I started and was life-changing for me, is I wrote down every single thing I did in a day. From the second I set up my computer to like everything that I do. Not just in a day, then I kind of expanded it to a week, and then I saw how many seats I had, and then I was advised by somebody, it's the best advice I ever got, was to delegate them into boxes. What I love and I'm good at, what I like and I'm not good at, what I really
I wanted
hate.
to do all this, but I felt like it would just feel cheesy to do. But really,
it really
the main
helps.
you've got to do one of two things. You either have to sit down by yourself and do exactly that, list out everything that you're actually doing and create some scopes, or you've got to get some help from somebody who that is what they do and they can just pull it out of you and they can do it for you in a couple of days.
Right.
So it's literally, how long did it take that process?
I mean, it probably took me a full day to think through it all, and then
your whole business.
Well, no, just the tasks I do, like
right,
on a day
just
to day.
your task,
Now,
right? But not from like a system
No way.
standpoint,
So
right?
so now it's been about 4 months since I've done this, and I literally only have maybe about 6 or 7 processes actually mapped and documented out of. It's like once you just keep discovering more and more and more.
Yeah,
processes.
so our largest client that we have currently, it was a 90-day process for us, but we built out, it's about 2,000 pages of scopes and process docs, but
It's
they have
crazy.
50 team members, right? And that was a 90-day implementation. On average, if you're hiring 1 to 2 people, we can build that full process in 3 to 4 days.
But the point of that is just to goes to show to anybody watching is that I don't think there's an awareness of how many processes and details there are, and you're not doing you or your team a service by keeping it in your head.
Right,
Like, you
and there's
have
no
to
way
get it
to
on paper.
scale. There's no way to grow. It's
You
a
can't.
transaction business. We all know that, but the machine's got to keep running all the time, so you're doing the same things over and over and over. The only way to grow is through leverage.
I want to,
Yeah.
and also talking about awareness, bring it back to the first thing you said about all of this was having an easy button, and the reason I bring that up is the power of the VAs, assistants, admins, whatever we want to call it, or you call it, because that's you're a BPO industry person, whatever that means. I forgot it already.
Doesn't matter. I should have even said that. Doesn't matter. Virtual assistant.
There we
That's
go.
all
there
that
we go.
matters. Yeah.
But it's like the fact that you literally every part of your business you could outsource, and I think that's going back to the stereotypes of fear, the stereotypes of the third world country. But like, there's people like I know like Bryce McKinley, when he was really big on the phones, like I don't know if he does the phones so much anymore, but his previous life, he was going Facebook Live on the phones and he was killing it. And he addressed this, but he was killing it because he wasn't talking to somebody unless they were already like pre-qualified, and the people that are doing pre-qualified were VAs. So like you could even funnel that, and then if you by chance find a VA that's a killer, they could be your killer, and then it's just, I think that it's literally limitless on what you could do, and it's all.
Yeah, if you do it the right way, right? We
yeah.
believe in a couple of principles. One is, everybody's heard right person, right seat, the good to great thing, right? But that's easier said than done, because the first thing you have to do is evaluate the seat, which is that job description, which we were just kind of talking through. Is like, how do we even figure out what the heck that job description is, right? And then identifying the right person to fill that role. Right, so it is easier to talk about than it is to actually implement, but that is like, if you want to talk about a formula for success, there's only one, and that's it, is you develop a plan, and then you go find the right person who can execute that plan. And that's why we screened over 4,500 resumes last month, because that process, the implementation, is what's actually important, right? But the systems piece, like if there's not strong systems for people to work off of, then they can never be successful. So
And
whether you're going to do it yourself or get some help, you should
exactly.
definitely
And I
start
think
there.
that what we try to do, or a trend that I've seen and I've done myself, is we want to hire somebody who's local, that hustles like us, that thinks like us. But what people forget is we're building a business, and I don't want them to take all of my stuff and go build a business. And so we sometimes want that employee mindset working within our business, and we have to give them the structure for that.
Yeah, you hit on two things there. I'll hit on the second one first. Like liability. People are oftentimes like, oh no, I'm nervous about somebody that's overseas or across the world. How do I worry about like security and proprietary information? The first question is, well, what do you do for internal staff, right? It's like with every software, you've got different levels of access for your internal staff. That works the same way, right? If you're working in accounting and bookkeeping, not everybody's got an admin access, right? Same way with our Infusionsoft accounts, whatever CRM you're using, Podio or whatever. It's pretty easy to delegate and section based on status with every software. Everything's done through username and password. And most importantly, if you have a good plan, which is what we're talking about here, is creating that job description, having a good plan in place, and that you're following up with your person and inspecting what you're expecting, right? There's a day-to-day, are they doing it, or are they not? It's kind of hard for there to be much liability if you're managing your teams, if you're following up. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It's like you create the plan, you have someone go execute. They need to be, actually, like how many calls did they answer? Your phones are all online. You can see if they're answering or not. You can see if they moved the lead through the system or not. You can see when they're in Propelio and when they're not.
And there's tools like we use Hubstaff or something that can actually be on their computers. I can see where they're clicking. I can see what tabs they have open. I can literally, it's like a clock in. There's so many tools these days to be able to do that. It's way more efficient than having somebody physically come and go, because I feel it's actually all documented versus having someone in my office.
Right. So having the plan and having what we just have an onboarding and accountability process to know what we're expecting from our team members every day, that's what creates accountability and transparency. It's when there's no plan and it's like, not everybody's like Ryan who can just go be accountable and get their stuff done without, his superiors knowing what the plan exactly is. He just gets his stuff done, right? It's kind of what you described. Like, nobody knows exactly what I do, but I crush it, right? I don't really manage all of our team. We're a little more, we like to have a little more transparency with our team members, but it's just based on productivity, based on output. Then that creates the transparency in the process in place you guys talked about. The second thing I'll say real quick is you're talking about we only hire people like us. I'm the #1 offender of that by far. Like, it's not even close. I will only hire people like me, and that's a terrible decision.
Yeah, I agree.
It's awful. But what we can show is it's pretty much like the empirical evidence shows it's about having the right person in the right seat. It doesn't matter where they're located. So our teams, our virtual lead managers, are consistently crushing statistically all of our internal US-based lead management teams for a lot of reasons: motivation, consistency. They're just incentivized differently. It's a specific role. Having somebody outside of your office removes a lot of that day-to-day pressure because everybody's incentivized a little bit differently and paid on different pay structures in real estate businesses, right? So our teams, our virtual teams that people are skeptical of, are actually outperforming statistically a lot of the roles Americans traditionally fill, just from the standpoint. It's really easy to think about. Like, we all get sick of answering the phone, right?
Yeah.
Seller lead calls. Like, I've taken thousands and thousands of them. I can't take another one. I can't do it. I would be a detriment in my business if I was answering the phone, right? If I was responsible for bookkeeping, about 70% of the details would be right.
That's the first thing I outsource.
That would be a disaster after
there.
that, right? So it's like, if you get the right person with the right skill sets, plus with the right training, right? If they're competent, then it doesn't matter where they're sitting. They ought to be able to crush their day.
I want to get more into that, but first we're going to go to a quick break. But I think when we come back from break, getting into more right person, right seat, that's more advice all around than just the VA, but I think it's good to touch on. Before that, I do want to touch out a couple people watching. Christina was talking about mapping, and she was asking Casey, when mapping out your daily tasks and processes, Are you only concerned with the business? What about personal workouts, etc.?
So when it comes to process mapping, we call them foundational Fridays. We pick a process and we spend 1 hour mapping that, and we stay dedicated to that. When it comes to personal stuff, I would say that comes down to you structuring your days. I think that should absolutely be included personally, because if you don't have that balance in there and that downtime, you're not going to be efficient for your team. But process mapping is purely for your business at that time, and you have to have dedicated focus on it. Otherwise, details get lost.
Totally
big
agree.
time.
And then Michael Goodman from Indy. I'm assuming that's Indianapolis or Indiana. I'm not sure which Indy. I don't know. Anyway, from same thing. Did I just say that? Indiana, whatever. Geography.
Okay. You're good at other things.
Words. Anyway, this is right on time for him. Been working on mapping and scaling businesses with this week, so cool.
Awesome.
Neil Howard asks, can anyone recommend good quality, affordable VAs just starting out and don't want to spend too much? I think that's a whole can of worms we can address when we come back from the break.
I think
exactly.
so.
Because obviously you have your services, but maybe somebody isn't ready for your services.
Yeah, let's talk through it.
Yeah, so, and then obviously you got some Facebook comments. Jessica, she was just saying she wants to shadow you, Casey.
Who?
Jessica Buchanan.
Oh, hey, Jessica.
Buchanan? Anyway.
I don't know. I sit at a computer these days, but we'll talk.
Cool. Well, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we'll address a lot of these things. We were talking about I forgot what we were talking about, but we'll be right back.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at propelio.com.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Ryan and Casey, Propelio TV, massive value, whatever we want to call it. There we go. Today we're talking with Robert Nickell from Rocket Station. Rob, I don't know, your email said Rob, so I call you Rob, but then somebody was like, Robert.
Call him the VA man.
The
VA
BPO VA.
man.
Give it a BPO.
Stop it.
Just VA.
Anyway, when we left for break, we were talking about right person, right seat. And then also a good question from Neil was, where do you start from just getting that one person to 1,000 person? Because like you said, you're working with a team that has 50 VAs. Mm-hmm. So I think we should start with the right person, right seat, just because that's where we were kind of conversing right before we went to break.
So we've created the job description, right? We've gone through, we've mapped the business out, we've process mapped it, gone through, moved all the communication, correspondence, and all the day-to-day stuff, how it flows, right? That's all mapped out. So then you create the game plan for who you're going to hire. And that creates a profile. So if you think of lead management versus accounting is the most polar opposite example I can think of. What do you need in accounting to be successful?
You need somebody who is good on processes and patience and details.
Right, so that's someone who's a little slower paced. Mm-hmm. That's someone who's detail oriented. Is that someone who is team driven or driven by their own goals?
By their own. Usually.
Well, team driven, right? Because it's like if they're by their
No, they want to be inside and like.
Yeah. We're saying the same thing, but like a sales guy, they're out there they're gonna have some oomph to them, right? So same way with like a lead manager, they have to have thicker skin. You don't really care if your admin that's running the books. You don't really care if they've got some thick skin and can handle some toughness on the phone, right? Because sellers say awful things at times, and someone's got to be able to handle the nuance of the call.
Exactly.
Right? It's just a different type of person. So a admin's going to be slower paced, more detail oriented. Mm-hmm. A lot of people like to use the DISC. I'm not even going to talk about DISC because it's statistically irrelevant, and it's been proven to be the only profile to get sued in the courts. You can't use it to
You can't use it as like
employment.
that's a good point, because we've talked about DISC and it's a great tool, but you can't hire fully based off of it.
I think it's a good tool to frame the mindset, but then you
Exactly.
need to find a tool that's statistically relevant if you're going to use that. So we do, everybody who applies, the first thing they do is take one of our statistically relevant profiling, and then we start segmenting from there. So if profiling is so important. Type person. Think about who you are and what you're good at. If I was an engineer, I'd be terrible. I'm good at what I do, right? There can only be one of me in the office. There's a few specific profiles. We call them architects or tech experts. These are people who move a little bit quicker, usually on the operations side. They have some autonomy. They like to not be micromanaged so much. They like to have some freedom to be able to get through their day-to-day. They like to have clear goals and be able to get to that. So identifying the job description, I think, makes the profiling pretty clear based on that. Some tasks are a little bit harder, to profile for, like executive assistants, because that needs to mesh a little bit more with your personality. But for almost every other role, there's pretty much a science to who should be.
And I like
role.
when I got turned on to some of the DISC and the profiling, it was really eye-opening, not just for myself, but as like the owner of a company, being able to, like, our job is to put them in a role that they're going to excel in, even if they think they might be better at something else. I think sometimes you have to kind of guide that. But I think knowing yourself really well is going to be the first step in figuring out what you're missing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I tend to be a chameleon where I'm like pretty even keel, but I sway more towards a higher influence, and I'm actually quite dominant in some areas. But I need someone to balance me out on the details.
Right, and you can't expect everyone to behave the way you behave or
Exactly.
communicate the way you do,
Exactly.
right? Nor would we necessarily need that. So profiling is super important, and there's lots of tools out there that can help you do that. But conceptually, it's pretty easy to think about that, right? And we all know tangible examples of people who are very technical oriented that do great with those jobs. We have a strict rule in our company. This is not somewhere where you come and like grow your weaknesses. This is somewhere where your strengths excel.
Yes.
We want you to come be amazing at what you do and your strengths. We're not coming trying to like work on all this other stuff.
This
like
is
no,
gold.
it's just
Yeah.
where you.
Did we get that golden nugget there? Because say that, like, what you said is really important. I think we live in a culture where everybody wants to be really well-rounded, and I think we need to go back to saying, figure out what you're super good at and own it, and like do good work there. And
I'm
that's what
only
I
hiring
expect.
people who are well-rounded. You have to be an entrepreneur. You have to evaluate yourself every single day, be a self-examiner, and try to improve yourself, or you're not working for our organization. But personally, you need to work on yourself outside of your 8 to 5 job. When it's 8 to 5, you're here to be Babe Ruth and hit home runs all day, right? Whatever that role is, that's what you're here to do. And we're not here to kind of grow outside of that. It's like, no, we're just here to hit home runs.
what,
and then
like-
we grow outside of
Love
our
that.
work.
Like Gary Vee, when he was at the Max Maxwell event, somebody from the crowd was talking about cold calling and this and that, and Gary Vee was basically saying, do you like cold calling? He's like, no. Are you gonna get at it? No. Don't cold call.
Exactly.
It's like, again, why don't do stuff that you suck at? Do the stuff that you excel at.
And be pretty honest about like if you're actually good at certain things, right?
Good at
like
everything,
for a
though.
while, I legitimately thought
Nobody-
I was good at everything. No, but seriously, I
No,
mean,
you do.
he made the joke, but like I did
I
too.
made a joke. I think I'm funny, and I just made a joke.
She
and
was
nobody
listening to me
laughed.
while you're
I
making your
was
joke
like-
though, but it's like same joke. But I
Noted.
legitimately, yeah, like.
I suck
But
at
seriously,
those.
it's like I thought I should write every property description. I thought I should do literally everything. I'm not good at writing flowery language on those, like
Yeah.
beautiful wood floor. So I mean, there's literally a million things happening all day, and I thought I had to do every single one of them because nobody could do it better than me. And that's just really.
And I think that this is a big issue too, because like everybody wants to start throwing. I say this all the time. I feel like every time I Propelio, I say, "Are you building a business or a hobby?" But not everyone has to build a business, guys. Like you don't have to build this huge operation if you aren't that type of person. Like not everyone has the entrepreneur mind, and that's okay. Maybe you partner with somebody and work on something together. Like you don't necessarily have to branch out on your own and do Your
Or
own.
you don't necessarily have to
massive thing.
partner either, right? Because with the idea of like VAs, you can
That's
specialize so much, and VAs can wear
Yeah.
multiple hats just like people can internally. And then if you need to hire, say, an acquisitions person, say you're not great at meeting with sellers and getting properties under contract, there's lots of people who are good at that, right? Or if you are good at that, which most of us in real estate, that's how we got into real estate, because we
Exactly.
are good
Yeah.
at that. We're not good at everything else, really, if we're honest with ourselves. That's where we should get help.
Well, and not to go too deep into profiling, because I think we've done several videos. I know Stephen and Daryl, they did a video a couple months ago about the
They
DIS
did, yeah.
test and profiling, and there's plenty of examples out there. But the biggest, to summarize, is make sure you're getting the right person in the right seat. But the beauty of Rocket Station, just to give you a mini plug right now, is sometimes you don't know what the right person is, or even what that seat entails.
Exactly.
So utilize your services or services like yours. I don't know what competitive markets out there for BPOs, but I'm just gonna keep on. I know you're like, dude, stop it.
That means
But
other things
but
in
again, though,
this industry.
it's if you can have somebody else
Right.
outsource. Basically, you're outsourcing having to identify what you need, which is great. But I want to pivot now to what Michael was asking, not Michael, but Neil was asking about. Where do you start? Determining, do I need one person? Do I need 50 people? If I need one person, I don't know if a Rocket Station is something that I need. If I need 50, obviously that's something I need.
Yeah, so
So-
and he asked a couple of specifics, like where can you recommend good quality. So there's platforms where you can hire yourself, like
Odes.
Upwork is
Upwork,
now what it
yeah.
is, right? It's the only
Fiverr.
publicly traded where Fiverr exists, and you just go through the process. The process for hiring a VA is the same as hiring an internal employee. You create the job description, you post that ad, you screen resumes, you do whatever background checks and resume screening and drug profiling that you do or don't do, and I don't know anybody that really has the capability to do that. We, of course, do that with all of our team members, right? Like in the United States, there's both federal and local background checks. It's the same in other countries too, right? So the process is the same, in my opinion, whether you're gonna hire a VA or at whatever rate for whatever task. The process, you just think about the same as you're hiring somebody internally, you hire externally.
And that's to me, and this is my own stereotypes, like when I think about hiring a VA, it's because I don't have to do all that stuff. But you're saying that you should.
Yeah, well, to be successful, I don't know how else you do it.
Right.
So you the Upworks of the world make it easy because there's a huge population of people who know what your pain points are, and so they're saying, hey, I can do these things, right? Now it's up to you to go figure out if they're actually good or not. Our acceptance rate within Rocket Station from application into training, we have a 6-week training program they go through before they get placed with clients, but we're less than 2%. We're at 1.47% of applicants actually get hired into our platform, and less than that actually make it through training.
Interesting.
So the process, that to me is the most robust and important part of
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
process is going through that, is getting quality candidates.
I was going to say, so when you're starting out, like you can go through people who screen and kind of do a lot of that stuff for you. There's just to answer his question another way.
Sorry, I meant to do that.
There's also like headhunters that you can connect with that can find somebody that know applicants in the industry if you know what position you want to hire. And that, I think, is the second part to that question is, how do you know when you're just starting what the first seat is that you should fill? I think we went back and forth between 2 or 3 different positions, and then it was funny because once we started using her, we're like, well, let's just do an admin who kind of does a few things, but as you grow and you start to build out your processes, you might realize that you want to like tighten up that role for them and then maybe hire someone else on, or as they get good, pass some of the more mundane stuff that they're doing to somebody else, maybe part-time. And so if you have any insight on like what it is, a process that you would go through to identify the first seat that you need.
Yeah, I know this is a cop-out, but it kind of depends so much upon how people do
That's our
their
favorite answer in real
day-to-day,
estate.
right? And
Rule number 2.
the beautiful thing about whether we're wholesaling or flipping or property management or turnkey or whatever most people are doing is we all get to kind of run our day-to-days how we want, and that's great, but it also creates enough nuance where it's hard for me to say the one thing you should be doing. I mean, anybody who doesn't have dedicated team members that aren't in office, answering the phones, doing all comps, building buyers list, doing all disposition transaction management besides at the house. So everything from contract to close. I don't see any reason why anybody ever hires that internally. It's the same process every single time to get a contract closed,
Right.
whether you're assigning it or double closing or taking down yourself. It's the same thing every single time, right? Few nuances that are contained in the contract. That conversation's held up
transaction
front in the
coordinators.
front email
It's the
and
same
transaction
thing.
coordinator, disposition management. Your buyers, you send out an email, you know, for a showing, or you've got a new property that you're marketing, and they all call you and ask you the 15 questions that are listed right there in the email. Then, like, somebody's got to answer those phones. All of those tasks, it's hard for me to pick one. All of them need to be delegated and outsourced, because there's not one of those that's worth hiring an internal team member and having them do it, because you can have somebody competent that's pre-trained go through that and plug and play and do that. So I think from all your admin stuff, your appointment setting, I think if you're not focused on revenue generating activities first, that you're going to be in trouble. So all your lead
Yes.
management stuff, all your follow-up, making sure every lead is called multiple times, following up like crazy, having somebody manage your acquisitions manager's day, you know, making sure the CRM is managed. That revenue generating stuff is first. I'm assuming most people kind of take care of some of that, because without it, you don't really have a business. And then it's all the day-to-day
But that
stuff.
stuff stops for a lot of people when they start getting the contracts. And that was our first, like, you know, oh, I can handle 4 contracts at a time before I'm stuck in transaction coordinating, you know? And so I think that's really good advice, to stick with the income generating, outsource the rest of the smaller tasks. But I think a big hang up for a lot of people out there is cost, right? Because you're you're so focused on the cost. Now, VAs are a lot cheaper than if you were to hire somebody here, which is great, but because the quality of work is still actually better, in my opinion, most of the time. But B, I would encourage everybody, and maybe you can speak to this, to think about how much more income generating activity you could do that could justify the cost, and how much more you'll be able to get out. And just a case in point, we switched to doing things more virtually, and one day we got 3 contracts simply because we outsourced somebody going to take the photos, somebody, you know, going to do that stuff, and it was all virtual, and my admin was able to take care of a lot of it.
You hit the easy button.
I hit the easy button by just letting go of that control. Had we had to go on every appointment and had the fear of, you know, needing to be there and like take control of it all, we would have probably only gotten 1 that day.
Yeah, exactly. So, you'll never get any of the momentum that creates real volume without having the leverage, right? So when I first started in the business, I could do 3 to 4 transactions a month, and I was working 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
So in order for me to do more than that, you got to get help. So I don't know how else to really say. There's a ceiling in this business based on sheer number of hours in the day. That's it. You can only get so much done. Competition's increasing. Margins are compressing right now. The only way to get anything done is to have some leverage. Cost, you can go online and you can find VAs or you know, overseas from $2 to more expensive than here in the US, depending on where. Quality is what I think you should primarily be focused with, because if the desired outcome is transactions, is doing deals, then it's not as much about what you're spending on the person, it's about the outcomes they're producing, is my opinion. So hiring somebody very cheap or outsourcing to a call center to answer the phones is costing you money, because that person needs to talk to somebody that cares about your business, that's incentivized to do that, right? So yes, you can find it cheaper up front, but it's about quality. So you've got to be able to balance
Exactly.
I think
that.
I think that's a great opportunity to pause and go to a break and segue to that and really start talking about the scaling side of things. Because we talked about the stereotypes, the benefits, all these things about the business side, but I'd really like when we come back from the break to really just like, okay, let's take your 1 to 2 deals a month, 3 to 5 deals a month, and go, okay, with the power of VAs, boom, I got 3 in one day. So we're gonna take a quick break. We're still live, so drop comments, drop love. Did I say love or love? It doesn't matter. We got a little counter here, so you know, let's get to 7,000 people. We'll be right back.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
Hey guys, welcome back. We've had a really good conversation about VAs, virtual assistants, how to hire, the benefits of doing, and I think where we left off, we were talking about scaling. Because it was such a pain point for me letting go of a lot of that stuff, and I have realized that my pipeline's bigger than it's ever been since I hired a VA.
Well, yeah, so you were sharing off, like before with Ryan, before I was even in here, I just got to overhear some of the stuff. Why don't you share a little bit of, rather than me talk about the scaling experience, why don't you just start with, for you, some of your
So I've talked to a lot of you guys in the industry, and it's like 4 deals was like my wall. And it was funny because we were listening to people and we're like, how are they doing more than 4 deals? And so it took a lot of conversations and like kind of looking at people's businesses before I realized, oh, they really are using mostly virtual assistants. I had no idea. I thought they had these huge teams in these offices but then I would only see them. And so I had no idea it was even possible. But it wasn't until I hired a VA that I was able to see our business just change drastically.
That's my exact story that I personally went through. I quit my corporate job in 2009. I jumped into real estate full time. I'd make some Facebook posts. I'd do some realtor transactions as a listing agent, as a buyer's agent, get into wholesaling, right? And then I hit a wall. 3 to 4 transactions a month. I was ready to go back and get a W-2 job because it wasn't a lot of fun to work the number of hours I was working. Went and visited my broker, who I respected a ton, doing a ton of business, had a comfortable life, was always at his kids' sporting events, coaching the games. He was always available, didn't seem super stressed. So I went to go visit him to see how he had it all figured out. And in the retail brokerage, he was leveraging overseas talent to do almost the entire 80% of the day-to-day, the circle prospecting and the following up and all the stuff that had to get done. And that's when it clicked for me that I had to be able to leverage in order to be able to get more done. It was that easy.
And I think, though, going back to Neil, and not just Neil, but just the general sentiment is like, yeah, but that costs money. You know, if I gotta, I mean, but again, I get it. Like, if it clicks, you're like, well, yeah, what's your time worth?
Yeah, so if I could do the same amount, if I could make the same amount of money but get some of my time back, that was worth everything to me. I was tired of missing Friday night dinners and not being able to hang out and be a normal person because I was working too much. But I also wanted to make real money.
Well, yeah, because you got to think though, if you're a $10 an hour VA, 40 hours a week, $400. Okay, $400 a week. Yes, that could be expensive, but if you got 2 or 3 contracts a week out of that.
Exactly.
Well, just think like $10 an hour comes down to less than 20 grand a year. So how many deals does it take? But or time is that back, right? So it's pretty easy to calculate it. It's not. I don't think that hiring team members is necessarily for anybody who's not doing transactions. Like if you're not actively in the business, if you're not marketing, if your phone's not ringing, if you're just evaluating your business, then I don't think it's a good time to hire. I think you should go put your nose to the grindstone a little bit. I think if you're actively in a business, I can't really see why people say all the time, well, there's not enough work. I'm like, yeah, really.
But I think the analogy there, though, like 1 or 2 contracts can pay for 1 VA for the year. And because again, going back to how the real estate business is very transactional, and if we think in terms of 1 or 2 deals, like we talk about deals left and right, like it's like, just whatever, who cares? But 1 or 2 deals can pay for a full-time assistant. I mean, if you can think that way,
more, right?
Exactly.
So from the time, so think about like, I keep coming back to the acquisition people. We have so many case studies where teams had acquisition guys going on less than 5 appointments a week and not even coming close to hitting their goals. Well, by just taking the phone calls off their plate, and letting them just go on appointments, they're converting about 40% of those appointments instead of 15%. So just think of your conversions. If you can close more just because you've got time to sit there and do what, I mean, right here and not too far away, I sat one afternoon with a guy for 2 hours as he told me stories about World War II before he sold me the house. The only way you can do that is to be able to sit there and focus and be able to have that conversation. Is everything else has to be off your plate.
And I think something to think about there too is you need to look at every deal as if it like there's a cost to that deal. And if taking out the amount it would take to have a VA out of that deal is what you have to factor in, then factor it in. I think sometimes we look at each, profit from every deal and a lot of people are just living off of that for the month. But you've got to take the portions out to run your business so that you know how many deals you need to get in order to sustain that. And I think some people don't know how to get to that place. They don't know how to look or think about their business as a business to put that money into it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for teams like ours, like we're happy to sit down with anybody and spend a few minutes to kind of go through that initial brainstorming process to help people get organized, because that is the hard part, right? Is just kind of is understanding or accepting or whatever it may be, overhead versus activity.
Yes.
You've got to balance that, right? And overstaffed is never good, but understaffed is way worse, right? And so there's just no way to actually be successful in this business. And I define success by doing transactions and generating revenue. There's no way to do that outside of a very small number of transactions per year without help. The National Association of Realtors, the best thing anybody could do is just Google National Association of Realtors stats of agents with assistants versus agents without assistants. Agents with make 3 times as much on average, I think, and investors are investors are significantly more successful than agents by percentage, and the margins are even higher. So we just don't have an NAR behind us to produce those
I think
stats.
the biggest takeaway of this entire conversation is if you're not running VAs right now, just go to 5 or map out what you're doing and start today. Start trying to find somebody today. Like to me, I think it's like anything else. Like hire a VA for like a one-off task just to get your feet wet. And maybe you can give better advice, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head, hire a VA, get your feet wet just to get over that hurdle of doing it, and then go, oh, that didn't cost that much, and it wasn't that big a deal. And I got, the only VA work I do at the moment, Propelio has a ton of VAs doing the list, but for me personally is like when we have our event, subtle plug, you're going to be speaking at on the 8th. Are you going to dress up? It's a costume party. That looks like fear.
This is kind of how I dress up. So
you're not gonna wear a costume?
I will figure it out, man. Well, put me on the spot.
Anyway, well, that's right. Anyway, but because we do have on the spot people writing in, handwriting in their emails, or like when they sign in because they didn't sign up before. So, by the way, if you don't want to have to do that at the event, go to our event page and sign up today. But I use those lists because there's always 100 to 200 people that handwrite in, scan that, send it off to the VA, and they type it up and send it back. There's no way I'm going to do that. There's no way. To me, that's an obvious VA task because I don't have the patience. I'm not a typer person. So it would take me 2 years to finish that out.
If people would actually look at what they do all day, not just think about it, but as they do their day, write down, go through. That's literally what I did. Is every day I write down. Every time I start doing a new task, I just write what time it is and I write it down. And you start seeing very quickly where you spend all your time, and it becomes very obvious what you should let go, because there's so many things that are remedial tasks that you do just because you take it on, and mostly because you don't want to slow down enough to delegate it or outsource or whatever, because it's easier sometimes just to go through it.
Slowing down. So one point that I just want to make is you're going to feel kind of the pains and gains, like TJ plug, of doing this. We were well, do we have enough work to hire? We have to hire to get more work, and then we got that, and then our lead got so big that we're okay, now she's overwhelmed, now we can go. But you're going to feel take 2 steps back to take 1 forward.
Or you can just come work with us. You
or
just
you
step
can
forward the whole time, right? So
that's
the deal. We've got tons of resources we're giving away, right? But anybody that wants to spend time with us.
So before we get on full on talk about Rocket Station, because we are wrapping up, what is the, hey, I've never worked with VAs, and then, oh, I need to call Rocket Station. What is that in-between phase of getting your feet wet? Like, where do you, because I know the sales pitch would be everybody's ready for Rocket Station, but the reality is if you're not doing transactions and you don't need that just yet, what's that in between?
Yeah, I put that point at anybody who's investing in their business. If you have consistent overhead from a CRM and marketing and you've got any consistent activity, then you're ready for some help. As far as knowing what to do and how many hours, you need to spend some time with our workforce management expert team. They're literally experts. They can map out based on the number of calls you're getting and emails and all the things that are coming through. They can do a workforce time study to know, so that that's a part-time person or full-time person.
So what you're saying is like there really is no in between. If you are doing deals and you are ready to scale up, just give your team a call and then y'all will decide, do I need one VA, do I need 5
Yeah,
VAs?
so like the first step is always just a discovery call. So whether you're gonna hire us or not, go through that process because our team can map it all out for you and give you what you need to know because nobody's done this more than we have and nobody's better than at it than we are. And the workforce management team is literally experts in this, working for some of the largest companies in the whole country, creating some of these time studies because workforce management's hard, right?
Yeah.
We all go through it, whether you're hiring one person or some of our bigger clients are hiring north of 100. So it's a painful process, right? But spend some time with us just because we can help you think about it and help you get structured, whether you use our teams or not.
Right.
But from that call, it becomes very clear on how many hours and how much time is spent where, and you have a very good idea of time allocation and where all your time is going, and a part-time person over here, what they could actually get done versus full-time.
Yeah, because when we had dinner the other night and we were just having a couple drinks and just talking about what they did, I was just like, my brain was like melting because like the mapping. I mean, we touched on a little bit here, but the mapping and then finding the right people, and then you even talked about your 6-week course for your VAs. Like most people don't have that. They're spending the week in, week out trying to tweak that VA and then going, oh, that VA doesn't work. I know Daniel's done several videos here on Propelio TV about VAs and hiring 3 to 5 at once, and then from there whittling down to the right person. But if you don't have time for that, you hire a service like Rocket Station to come in, and they just do it for you.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do it. You can do it yourself, right? And the idea of having multiple people complete a task is if you're doing it yourself is absolutely a great way to do that, especially if you have the resources. Or you can our 6-week training program. If you're hiring a lead manager, if you need somebody that's on the phone, you can hire somebody that's taking a couple thousand calls before you ever get them, right? Because the most difficult thing about working with seller leads is managing to gauge the motivation. It doesn't matter 3-bedroom, 2-bath, the size of the house, none of that matters, right? It really matters why they're looking to sell and then moving on from there. So you want somebody with experience. You can either go figure it out yourself, or I use the word easy button, based on job description and task and our training platform and the segmentation and profiling they go through within a couple days. We map out your business. The first, doesn't take very long, and then a couple days later, we hold your hand through the interview process. You're actually selecting the candidates yourself, so you hear them, see them, interact with them, just like any normal hiring process. Our team just guides the whole thing. And then once you select somebody you're really excited about, we help you with the upskills training to make sure they can get implemented in onboarding. And then we stay with you for the life of the account. We talked about accountability early on and getting what you deserve from your team members. And that's why our team stays with you for the life of the account, because it's not just building the process and finding the right person. You've got to manage them to success.
And
right?
so
we're there for
can you speak or kind of give any kind of insight into what you've seen with companies that have used you and have been at the pace of which they're able to scale?
Yeah, it totally depends on the investment that people are willing to make into their businesses. But we've got property management teams who have grown from 400 doors to 2,200 doors in the last 3 years, and they're using primarily our teams in that process. Wholesalers who used to have 14 team members internally doing 200 transactions a year now have 4 team members internally. The rest are staff and doing the same number of transactions.
Wow.
My favorite story from last year was a company out of Memphis And you guys remember it snowed in Memphis last year, and it was like
Yeah, I'm highly apprised to Memphis. weather
yeah, and
patterns.
you're great with geography. I could tell
Yeah.
from early on. Well,
Oh,
it's like Memphis got a snowstorm in it, and it froze in Memphis for the first time in however long.
Yeah.
Well, this one company had 57. They were doing 57 turns at the time, and those were busted water pipes. Guy pulls up to his office at 7:30 in the morning, and he calls me because not one of his internal employees is there, and all 30 of his VAs are working, and they got through the day fine. So it's not just about the momentum. It's not just about
almost a
getting
security
it
blanket.
done. It's the emotional capacity you get back. I think ROI is important, but I think enjoying the business you run is everything.
Mhm.
That's good. That's a good note to end on. Enjoying the business is everything.
So as far as like just final points, final takeaways, anything that we didn't talk about or didn't ask, like what are some things that, or is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like the audience to know about the VAs and whatnot?
Yeah,
or
we-
even full on.
We kind of surface level talked about most everything, right?
Yeah.
There's kind of a step to hire,
Right.
an 8-step process, the hiring that we go through. We're happy to share that with
Yeah.
anybody. And I know this, generally what happens is it makes sense to people. They're like, hey, it totally makes sense, I get it, but how does that apply to me? I would love anybody who would like to reach out. They can, reach us
Yeah.
directly, rocketstation.com, spend some time with the team, and
So
we're happy to spend one-on-one time with
I
them.
guess on that note, give us a full, like, look at that camera, give us a full on Rocket Station plug.
Oh, I can plug?
Go for it, man.
All right, we are the premier virtual assistant company for real estate investors in the world. We have our global headquarters here in Dallas, Texas. We also have a headquarters in Manila, Philippines, where most of our teams come from. But we go through a simple process with all of our client partners. We first build a plan. We create a strategy of how that plan's going to be executed, and then we hold your hand end to end through that process and never leave you for the life of the account. So whether that's lead management, executive assistant, disposition, or a little bit of all of it, spend some time with our team to create that plan. They'll actually process map, create those scopes and processes for you because most of you are terrible at that. So the team will actually create that for you and then help you implement, answer all your questions, whether it's technology or efficiency. We've got you covered. We just want you to do more deals.
Yeah.
So call us and get aligned, and we're happy to take you to the next level.
One thing that we didn't talk about that I thought was interesting from the other day was and if I mess up the number, I guess correct me or whatever, but like you have 70 VAs that run your company. Like,
Yeah, the support staff,
the support staff alone for Rocket Station that runs all your VA. So like
That's impressive.
you hire Rocket Station, not only do you get your VA, but you're getting those people to service like all that.
Yeah, I
think
mean,
that's
we
huge.
have several
VA
hundred people under
inception.
management. We've
VA
helped
inception.
thousands of investors. This is something over the last several years that we feel like we've gotten really, really good at.
Well, I
Awesome.
appreciate being here. Casey, bring out your big book of questions or final thoughts.
We don't have enough time for those, so I'll give you my final thoughts instead. Reach out to him, guys. I think, honestly, I might be having a conversation with him when these cameras in, but honestly, hiring VAs was the biggest thing that's changed our business for sure. So I'd love to connect with you guys. You can reach me on Facebook. Are we doing end plugs?
Sure, why not?
You
just
can
gave
reach
like
me
an hour, like you just, one-on-one.
on Facebook or follow me on Instagram, Casey Buys Houses. If y'all need help closing anything in DFW, foreclosures, you need help with transaction coordinating, reach out to me. I can help you with some of those processes. And yeah.
October 8th, Propelio event. We've got Rob Nickell, we've got Gary Harper, and then you also have got Eddie Wilson. And it's kind of timely because the event's theme is going to be, team building and scaling and systems and that type of thing. And it's in October, so therefore costumes. I think I'm supposed to be Wreck-It Ralph per Quentin Flores'
Oh, that's
request
awesome.
and his kids' requests. Do you know what your costume's
If
going to be?
y'all have recommendations for costumes for us,
Yeah.
drop them in the
Yeah,
comments.
drop in the comments what your costume is going to be or what you think our costume should be. And Rob definitely needs help.
He needs the
'cause-
most help because he's not showing up as himself.
Open
all
to
right?
suggestions.
And then I just secured Grant Kemp to be our moderator MC for the event
awesome.
yesterday, so that'll be fun. Other than that, it's going to be good times. I got my whole scaling shirt, so if you haven't signed up for whole scaling live
Yes.
down in Houston,
I'm excited
October
for
4
that.
through 6, go get tickets. Tommy, you got anything?
I do not.
Tommy ain't got nothing, so we're going to be done. Any last things?
Can I give him an email address?
Yeah.
No. Yes.
Yeah, email Greg. He's our business development expert that leads our biz dev team. And, for you guys, he'll take care of everybody specifically. So Brooks, BROOKS at rocketstation.com is Greg's direct email. So if you go to Brooks at Rocket Station, he can set up a discovery call for you guys.
Awesome.
That's
Cool.
exciting.
Let him know you came from Propelio.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. Grant, teach me something. And if you enjoyed this episode, give it likes, give it shares, give it subs, give it all the loves. Ooh, I like that.
That was good.
I should end on that. I think I
You
messed
should.
up. Anyway, we'll see you next time.